Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
I still believe the future of short-term rentals is 10 million small operators and not like 10,000 massive operators. It's just the nature of short-term rentals and like how you have to clean them and all this local bit of the approach and just it's just different than hotels, right? Nobody's proven they can scale a good vacation rental property management business. And, I think, HostMaker went bust recently. There's been some layoffs other places. I think you'll see that to continue across industries because short-term rentals are best managed locally.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
What's up, all my Slick Talkers? You are about to listen to the Vacation Rental Mastermind series. I have sat down with some of the biggest experts in the vacation rental space all over the globe, and we created a 10-episode series where we dive in from how to be a host, how to maximize your property, how to manage a property from big management companies, as well as technology and fraud protection for your guests and for yourself as a host and an owner/investor. So tune in every week for the next 10 weeks to enjoy the Vacation Rental Mastermind series on Slick Talk, and check out every single guest that's going to be on the show on all social media platforms. For many short-term rental operators around the world, these last few weeks have been a nightmare with record low bookings and sweeping cancellations. In times of uncertainty, data becomes less of a luxury and more of a fundamental need. As the world's leading provider in short-term rental data and analytics, AirDNA tracks the daily performance of over 10 million listings on Airbnb and Vrbo in 80,000 global markets. Plus, they're working hard to provide real-time insights and tools for those who have seen revenues drop. If you're wondering how to manage your listing or what the competition is doing in this time of crisis, AirDNA's Market Minder tool is the safest way to go about it. Subscribe to any city or neighborhood and get access to interactive charts, a dynamic pricing tool showing high and low demand days, a thorough rundown on the competition, and much, much more. If you don't yet manage a property, then you can type in any address in the world and see how much it could make you as a short-term rental. Visit their website at airdna.co for more information. Again, that's airdna.co for more information.
He's kind of like the Joe Rogan of the hospitality industry right now.
I want to know a little bit more about you, your background, how Scott got to where he is today.
The story, it really started, I had really one job before I started AirDNA, and I spent about 10 years really running a data and analytics team at a consulting company. And that gave me sort of all these raw tools and ways to think about how to analyze data to create AirDNA. So I was, running a, pretty large team, about 60 people of researchers and knowledge managers at a company called Corn Ferry up until 2012. And they had some new CFO came in, didn't really like me and laid me off. And I was there for 10 years. And so I got a really nice severance package, decided to go take that opportunity to go travel the world. And, my neighbor at the time told me about Airbnb, and, while I was traveling, why not just throw it up there? So I didn't have to put my stuff into storage or, take the hit of my, $3,000 a month rent. Yeah. So I did it, and 2 weeks later I was off to Bangkok on a one-way ticket, and, I was getting bookings every day on my cell phone. And I had a friend who I let use my car for the 6 months I was gone, help me with check-ins and check-outs and getting my cleaner over there. And, the light bulb sort of just went off when I was, in Bali and paying for my journeys with income generated from my 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Man, this is too easy. And how am I making, $7,500 a month in my $3,000 apartment without thinking about it too hard, right? With crappy cell phone pictures, no really idea how to price my property. And so when I got back from that journey, I was looking for another job, didn't find anything I was really excited about. And so I just started doing the rental arbitrage game, basically leasing apartments around Santa Monica and then, furnishing them and throwing them up on Airbnb until I had about 8 of them over the course of about 2 years. So this was like 2013, 14. I was sort of scaling my own little Airbnb business, and it was doing great, right? The more I thought about it, the more I tested things, the more data I was getting, I was just able to sort of continue to just drive more revenue from that property. And so they're all doing, $7,000 a month pretty consistently on 8 properties. And I was like, this is the dream. This is good. I think a lot of people have a similar story, sort of like fell into it.
Very much.
I think I just had sort of that thirst for the data and like really what I could do from analyzing the competition to revenue management to thinking about new properties to acquire. I just sort of just went narrow and deep. And that was sort of what spurred or what created AirDNA at the end of the day.
That's amazing. Yeah, it sounds like the current AirDNA entrepreneur, or not AirDNA, Airbnb entrepreneur, where they started just as a hey, might as well give it a shot, and then boom, ends up being pretty lucrative. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, totally. And regulation today was difficult for me. Santa Monica was one of the first to make Airbnb illegal in the city. And so that definitely kind of gave me this idea, like, oh, like it's been too good. This might be coming to an end at some point. And so I need to figure out what can I pivot to?
Yeah.
The natural pivot was I'm using all this data to kind of create these best-in-class properties in Santa Monica. And I had like 3 of the top 10 performing properties in all of Los Angeles at the 1-bedroom level. And so all my friends were calling me the Airbnb doctor because they were like, dude, look at my listing. What am I doing wrong? And so that was, really the idea was like, all right, cool, let's pivot. Let's go to something where we're giving people all the tools that they need to scale a short-term rental business. And, not really go down this sort of path that everybody else went down, which was, I was friends with the guys at Sonder early on and Lyric early on. And so, I didn't have a real estate background, I had a data background, so that just made sense for me at the time.
I was going to say, so that's an interesting way to pivot because you saw there was going to be, a future, roadblock in a lot of ways, with the regulations that, especially with now, in the industry, regulations coming down a little bit harder in certain areas. But what I like about that is because, like you said, I'm a numbers guy. I'm a geek when it comes to that. And so with that, what did I know that sparked the idea for AirDNA, but what really got you the information to create this platform that you have now?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of in passing. I was having a conversation with a friend, fellow entrepreneur, and he mentioned something about scraping a separate site. And I was like, what's scraping? And he was like, oh, you can sort of just screen scrape and grab all the data from the properties. And I was like, that was the moment I was like, wait, what? I can get this data and I can download it and I can play with it, like just in an Excel format and just sort of see what I can pull from it. And so, it's a pretty funny story. My dad's been an engineer, data engineer for a long time. And so at the dinner table conversation, I was like, hey, Dad, do you know how to scrape? Can you build a scraper? And so it was a really family business early on. 2014, he outsourced an initial scraper to some guy in India for $100. And we just started getting some data on the California market at first. And that was the idea, man. And once I had all that data at my fingertips, I was just geeking out in Tableau and just creating charts and just trying to think about how to think about this data set in comparison to the hotel data set in terms of like what I can get from Zillow and just trying to see like where these like perfect pockets were. Like hotels were really expensive, real estate was relatively cheap, or rents were really cheap. And there was this amazing like differential between like what a hotel was charging and what a 1-bedroom multifamily place that was twice the size, the balcony and the kitchen you can get for rent. And so that was the initial data analysis. It's just like I knew that there was this massive arbitrage opportunity in the market, and I was kind of one of the first people I think to really analyze that in depth.
Well, I was going to say, I think when it comes to the guest perspective and experience, right? You have a hotel room that's going, let's say in California, for $400 a night, when you can get the same property, or not the same property, the same price for the bigger property. That's more perceived value. They're going to be able to bring their friends, not have to worry about the kids being crammed, doing all this other type of stuff. So the perceived value is going to be a lot more to the guests, as well as your operational costs. You have one unit that you have to clean.
Yep.
Versus the hotel who's got 70 units or 80 or 100 or, all the other stuff that goes into it. So,
and you only have to clean once per stay, not once per day, which is
yes.
a huge advantage as well.
Yes, exactly. So I think that when people are talking about data and numbers, they're always talking about, how can we drive RevPAR? How can we get, occupancy up and all this other stuff, those are important factors, but you have to also consider your operational costs and your operational structure, because at the end of the day, you could have the best RevPAR in the city, but if you're spending more money to clean or flip a property than you are making, you're game over.
Yep. And I was super hands-on, right? Because that's the nature of this business. It was so new. I want to know everything I could do and every corner I could cut, right? I mean, I was cleaning my own properties. I was doing everything myself. I was scrubbing my own toilets. And just because I was trying to, just eke out every single penny out of that property I could, just see how good it could get. And then you start to outsource the things that, you don't want to roll up your sleeves and clean toilets for the rest of your life, right? And so you start to think about what you can outsource at the cheapest price. And that was all part of the experience, right? And that was all part of the learning, is about how do you maintain just a super tight, operating sort of budget and expense.
I totally agree. So with the start of, it's a family business, like you were saying, you and your dad were, scraping all this data, getting this all into an Excel format. So help myself and the audience understand what it really goes into from that phase into the algorithms and the platform that AirDNA really is today as a whole order to help hosts and hospitality providers or property managers to get the most accurate data to help them make the most effective revenue strategy for their listing. Because this is a question that I think we see quite often. I'm in a lot of, like Airbnb groups or VRBO groups or whatever, and all this, networking events. And a lot of people that listen to the show and have listened to the series have been, sparking questions like, how do we know this is accurate? How do we know that the algorithms, blah, 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 and all these other questions that go into it? Where does this data come from? These are all stuff that I think for the new host or for the people that were in your shoes when you first started, trying to maximize every single thing by, scrubbing their own toilets and doing everything else from the very beginning and being very hands-on, to the part where they're now probably maybe phasing into the background a little bit to then, optimize the revenue and grow the business in other areas.
Sure. A lot to unpack there. We'll start with the data component, right? And, we were fortunate. I launched AirDNA officially in April 2015. We were scraping Airbnb for the year prior to that. But in that year prior, we can see what was a booking on Airbnb, right? And if you look at a competitor's calendar, your own calendar, you can see what's available, what's unavailable. And you can make some good assumptions about, is that a booking or not, right? If it's blocked for the whole month, or it's just there's weekend bookings that are sort of sporadic, that's pretty obvious to the eye, right? Somebody just the amateur looking at a calendar. The reason we launched AirDNA in 2015 is that Airbnb had sort of a glitch and an oversight in how they were displaying calendars in the source code. And, it was definitely an oversight. They started actually revealing reservation IDs for the length of the stay, that it was actually a booking on Airbnb.
Wow.
And that's when it was okay, this is now a business. I have 100% accuracy on what is a booking, what's a block date on the platform. And so we were able to capture about 20 million reservations on the platform between April 2015 and September 2015, when they finally sort of shut that down and went back to not displaying that data. And so that was sort of our first test. Okay, now we don't have total transparency into it. Now, how do we build a model that really recreates exactly what that looked like? And that's when we worked with a team at MIT, a bunch of about 3 PhD students at the time. We said, hey, what can you do with this information? We've got 20 million reservations. We got all these property details. So we know all these details, what's the average length of stay? What's the average booking lead time? How does net review changes over the month really correlate to whether it's a booking or a block day?
Mm-hmm.
About 12 different sort of attributes went into that model. And we're able to get to about 92% accuracy of deciphering what is a block day versus an actual reservation on the platform. And so that was amazing. That's good. In data science world, 90% accuracy is amazing. But obviously, the world changes over time, right? This isn't 2015 anymore. We're in 2020. And so over the last 5 years, what we've been doing is amassing data from data partners, right? So we partner with channel managers and PMS systems and large vacation rental managers. And we say, hey, we'll give you a bunch of market insights. We'll give you a bunch of pricing details, if you open up your vault of information and share that with us. Gotcha. So we've got about 450,000 properties that send us their daily reservation data currently, which is, it's a good number. It's only about 5% of the properties that we track on a monthly basis, but it's enough to sort of update and train our model to get to that accuracy over time. So that's the quick and dirty. I mean, it definitely gets harder every day. Like everybody reveals less information, like you can't look historical at all anymore. So, we've got 20 engineers that try to figure out how to squeeze as much accuracy out of this thing every single day.
Definitely. Well, with that goes into, because when I'm using Market Minder, right? I use it for our properties to figure out comps, and our properties are a little bit different for our area because they're, the grander scale, sleep 25 people, they're over 10,000 square foot, all this type of stuff, right? So with the data that you've compiled, and you have about, like you said, 450,000 properties or channel managers that share this information, how is it able to then, so I guess maybe the geeky side or the engineering side, where they take the information that you currently have and are able to kind of look at comps, right? You're able to see properties maybe that are not in that 450,000, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so that 450,000, who's our partners, right? We're still scraping probably 10 million a day, something like that. And so that's pretty much the full universe across VRBO and Airbnb.
Yeah.
And so so how are they using the data? I mean, that's the fun part of the last 5 years, right? So we've got this amazing data. How do we make it actionable for people? Because there's this sort of interesting side of the business, right? Like somebody who's thinking about buying a second home and like, all right, I'm not going to be there for 8 months out of the year. Like, how much of my mortgage can I recoup while I'm not there? And there's sort of just like this general market intelligence data, right? Like, what is ADR? What is expected occupancy rate for a 4-bedroom home in this zip code, right? And that's all sort of like nice to know when making an investment decision or trying to sort of benchmark your performance versus the broad marketplace. I mean, I think what you're talking about is, unique properties that don't have a ton of comps or like really solid comps. And we're one of the only, if not the only company that has enough trust in our data to actually show property level performance, because it's hard, and like we're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but we feel pretty confident enough that we're going to show you what we think every property earns, right? And every Airbnb host and property manager can go in there and sort of confirm, how close we are, generally within like a 10% margin of error on those numbers. So I mean, that's why Market Minder is really helpful, because you can go in, zoom in on the map, sort of filter for 5-bedroom plus properties, and sort of say, okay, nothing's just like mine, but here's a 6-bedroom here, a 7-bedroom there, and sort of just look at those properties, see how they're doing, seeing how they're pricing in the future.
I agree. The demographic, and I think what you guys have opened up with AirDNA is huge, because a lot of this tools and data and analytics is not normally open. Like from my world previously, the hotel world, this is something that all the properties have access to via hotels, but we don't have access to any of this information regarding vacation rentals, as well as we don't know exactly our competitive bookings, and if they're actually a real competitor. Are they blocking? Are they holding rooms? Are they not holding rooms? all the stuff that goes into it. Mm-hmm. But so what you've done is you've opened it up to the broader market. So anybody, like you said, who's just either starting out, got a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and they're just like, yeah, I want to put it on. And that's the thing. I always tell a lot of my clients or a lot of people that ask us these questions, right? How do you know AirDNA or blah, blah, blah is accurate when it comes to the pricing and the predictive, pricing and comps and all that other stuff? Well, mm-hmm. Like you said, it's within a margin, right? You have this information from the last 5 years that you guys have collected, plus all the other information that you guys are going through every day. Now is your job as either the host, the manager, or the revenue manager, or whoever, you take that. That's where the human instinct is this is where it gets fun, because now we get to play with it. you get to experiment, you get to test, you get to, raise rates, you get to drop rates, you get to do all this fun stuff. And that is where it becomes your data, not everybody else's data, because this is your property. It's a little bit unique in a different aspect. And I always tell people that it's not like it's, written in scripture on stone or whatever, and this is the way it is. Like, oh, AirDNA says it's, $159 a night. That's it. Can't go any above, can't go any lower, like it's not set in stone. So that's the fun part where you get to play with it and really experience the growth of your property. So
cool. Yeah. You're first off, we created this tool to really democratize data in the short-term rental space, right? As the sharing economy, we didn't want to create a data set that was just going to let hotels squash short-term rentals or just support the Saunders and Lyrics of the world and forget about the small guy. Like, I built the tool to help me, which is the guy with 8 properties in Santa Monica. And I wanted to create a price point for the product that made sense for somebody that was operating in that sort of revenue realm, right?
yes.
And so the average subscriber is $50 a month, right? And some people think that's crazy expensive, and other people think I'm giving it away for free, right? But it all depends if you have 5,000 properties or one private room, and kind of what that price point is for you. But we try to make it accessible, not just from a price point, but from a simplicity and from just the way we reveal the information, to try to make it that you don't have to have a PhD in data science to try to figure out what's going on in your marketplace. But now thinking about the actual data, you're right. Every vacation rental property is very unique. They're all a snowflake, as we say, right? And it's just not a cookie cutter hotel room. So revenue management is way different for a vacation rental than it is for a hotel. I won't get into all the details, but your furnishing, your reviews, your track record, your photos, all that stuff plays into how you price, what your comps look like, and everything you should be doing about that property from a revenue management perspective. And that's hard, right? That's hard to bake into any sort of pricing system. Mm-hmm. We've tried to do it, and it is hard. We think we have one of the best tools in the system that actually do recommended rates for properties. We can price 7 million properties around the world. But this nature of the location, right? If you got the beach view versus the street view, that's a way different property how you price it, right? And those are sort of the basic complications of any sort of pricing tool for vacation rental properties.
Well, I was going to say, it's very I'm a certified hotel revenue manager, but at the end of the day, when you're 100% right, the revenue management for vacation rentals and hotels, very night and day difference when it comes to it. But there are commonalities, and I think if we take the commonalities, seasonality is a huge one. You got your peak seasons, like anybody or any city or any neighborhood or whatever. You have, your holidays, all the other stuff that increase travel, that increase. And I think with the huge, like you said, the hotels do the same thing. You don't have good photos, you don't have good reviews, you don't have, whatever else, all the other, things that we talk about as, having a successful listing. Your booking and usually ADR and average occupancy is not going to be as high as the person that does. So if you take the commonalities and you apply that, and then with AirDNA, what I've liked is that if you go to some markets, it's not going to be $60 a month. Some of them are $19 a month, depending on the market area. So it's actually a different price point going into your demographic and your area. So really, at the end of the day, spending $19 to $60 a month for an extra $1,500, $2,000 worth of bookings by using these tools and getting these factors into a certain order, right? I don't know.
We think it's a deal. We think it's a deal, and we have 10,000 subscribers right now, so we're pretty happy with that. We definitely dominant market leader in this space, and we think that's because we really try to cater towards the small guy. I still believe the future of short-term rentals is 10 million small operators and not 10,000 massive operators. It's just the nature of short-term rentals and how you have to clean them and all this local the approach, and just it's just different than hotels, right? Nobody's proven they can scale a good vacation rental property management business. And, I think, HostMaker went bust recently. There's been some layoffs other places. I think you'll see that to continue across industries because short-term rentals are best managed locally. right? The local knowledge,
Yeah.
the local team, and the local knowledge for revenue management even. It really takes somebody that has that local expertise. So, but yeah, I mean, the biggest problem obviously you're solving as a short-term rental operator is like, dude, what is the demand for my Saturday versus the Wednesday in April, right? Do I need to be decreasing by 10% or like 70% to get that thing booked? I don't know. What are those like little random events coming in my city or conferences or like Frisbee tournaments I just don't know about? And like, is that actually generating demand or not? I don't know. When are people traveling for spring break to my market? I don't.
Yeah.
Do I need to look up all the school districts? I don't know where they're flying in from. It's like you can see that pop really early on, right? So we try to show like when those little spikes are, what the competition's doing about that spike, and then you got to figure out like, okay, cool. Do I want to get booked 6 months out in advance? Do I want to hold high on my price and sort of wait for that really, really sweet last minute booking? And so we can't give you all the answers. You definitely got to sit on top of that data, know your property, know your market, and sort of know how to read the data and start to make some good decisions about how to compete.
Yes, I agree. And I like the phrase I've heard earlier on from back like 2 years ago. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it, right? So here's all the data. Here's all the tools that you need. Now you have to choose how you use it, right? So I think that's a key indicator on when it comes to, I think, the growth of the entrepreneurial Airbnb host, right? This is now you shifting away from working for somebody else, and now you are doing something for you. You're using your asset that you've put time and effort into to then now increase your lifestyle in some way, whether it's financially or whatever else. So that's the beauty.
Yeah, it's hard, because I wish I could create a tool that could answer everybody's questions. I think what I realized early on is that there's so many dang questions I can never answer them all. Like, if I spend $5,000 on a jacuzzi, how long will it take me to recoup that cost? Like, I can't answer that, but you can look at properties that have jacuzzis. You can sort of see how much they're earning more in the winter than they are, in the summer, or how much more they're earning. You can start to dive into the data to sort of answer that question. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no Alexa feature now where you can just ask it and it'll just give you the response, but we're working towards it.
Yeah. Well, I guarantee AirDNA will probably be the first one to have it. So, my next thing for you, I guess have my foot on both sides, from hotel to vacation rentals. I want to briefly touch on a short-term rental and the impact or insight you may have seen off of the data numbers from your AirDNA data on the impact it has on the hotel world. Do you think there is any impact? Are hotels upping their game, or are they falling behind? That is the question I think we see often in our industry, just because I do think, in my opinion, for anybody who's listened to the show consecutively, knows that I love hotels. I always will. I also love vacation rentals because it's my business. But at the end of the day, I think hotels have always had the hardest time keeping up with today's technology, today's traveler. Of course, you have the big name brands like Marriott and Hilton, who are usually backed with millions, if not billions of dollars to advance in this area, right? With mobile keys and all these other extra features, Alexa hospitality, all these things that people are looking for. But now you come down to the mom and pop shop, who is an individual owner. The property makes $4 million a year, hotel base, and now the vacation rental market around them is swarming. And do you think there's any impact?
Without doubt, there's impact, right? And I think the hotels they knew there was impact early on, but they can't say that on their quarterly earnings calls, right? Mm-hmm. But you could tell by what they're doing, how they were adapting some of the different sort of just different components of the short-term rental space. But from the data, what we see is that hotels are impacted, but we can really only prove it out in the data right now in terms of when there's like compression night events, and you're the hotel guy, so you know what that means. Yes. That's sort of when hotels have at least 95% occupancy in the marketplace. And that used to be hotels' bread and butter. And that's why everybody was hired as revenue managers to identify these compression night events and start cranking rates up by 2-3 times the average daily rate. what we've seen over the last 3 years is like actually negative ADR growth across the hotel industry, like real ADR growth. You take out like inflation over time. And so that's super interesting. And, that's over the last 3 years. And it sort of goes against any sort of trend that we've seen historically in the hotel industry. And as we sort of plot the growth of short-term rentals and look at like how the hotels don't have pricing power, I think that's a pretty easy, and I think there's some really solid conclusions that can be made there. So that hotels during big events can't price gouge anymore, right? Yeah. And I think that's the most immediate impact to hotels. And the most immediate impact to hotel revenue managers is that you can't just think about your 5 competing hotels around. You got to think about your 1,500 short-term rental properties. And if the Super Bowl is coming to town or some like Daytona 500 is coming in, it's going to be 15,000 properties that are going to be in there competing for that same guest, right? And they sort of appear overnight and they disappear the next week. And it's really hard to adjust for how to price your hotels, and you don't even know what the supply is from the short-term rental market around you. And so, we work with some hotels that are in markets like that, like in New Orleans or Austin or other places. So that sort of are really reliant on those big events to make some money. We do help them try to figure out like what does supply look like for South by Southwest. So that's on the revenue management front. I mean, so yes, we see it impacting how hotels are pricing, and then we see how it's going to impact their valuations, right? I mean, I think we did a report with CBRE recently, and it was basically like, you've got to be thoughtful about, short-term rental regulations, because it is going to impact what your hotel values are at the end of the day. And so why is that? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, right? It's just that the more supply in the marketplace, as people really do think of short-term rentals as a true alternative to hotels, not really better or worse, but just like, I'm going with my family, I'm going with 5 buddies, I'm going, 4 or 5 days. I went to choose Airbnb where I used to choose the hotel, right? And if I'm going for 2 nights, I'm going for a work thing, and I'm going by myself, I'm going to go stay at the hotels. But they're going to keep nipping away and biting away at sort of that travel that's longer than 3 days in length and has sort of more than 4 people coming along. And so I think that's inevitable long term. I mean, there's a lot of trends, obviously. I mean, I think the interesting thing is that the hotels really can't compete with one of the biggest reasons people take short-term rentals, which is locations. Sorry, my phone's going crazy.
That's okay.
And that is because short-term rentals have this luxury of being able to be anywhere, right? And we see that people typically choose vacation rentals because it's of the proximity to where they're going, right? Is at the conference, is that the high school graduation, is at the hospital, right? And there's not a hotel right across the street, right? And that's one of the benefits that hotels will never be able to catch up with, is having two keys here, 2 keys there, 2 keys there, right? And so I think it's an interesting trend. It's at like 35% of Airbnbs, there's not a hotel a mile around, right? And so I think that's also just an interesting thing to watch over time, is that the proliferation of Airbnbs will be, all around suburban and rural areas and resort towns. There's going to be like evenly distributed in places where hotels can't well service those markets. I could go on and on and on, but maybe direct me in other trends you think are interesting.
No, I definitely, I don't know. I come from the side of seeing, so I started out with Marriott. So we're, pretty dominant property, and then going from Marriott to an individually owned, operated business where it's definitely 10% of the rooms, 716 rooms originally, to 70 rooms. That's literally like the small, version of creating that. And the uniqueness from it was that the property that had 70 units actually was able to then list, I think, maybe 10 of them on Airbnb to then increase that growth. And I think and it kind of goes into the statement that I've said prior, is that hotels are slow to innovate into this way. Whether it's, because like a lot of guests, when hotels, you think of a hotel, you think of complimentary continental breakfast in the morning, if not complimentary, $10, and it's probably the same items or if not less. And then you have, the basic amenities that you need, clean bed with clean sheets and clean pillowcases, a clean bathroom, so that way you're not, seeing remnants of anybody else prior, and then peace and quiet usually, or good Wi-Fi, depending if you're on a certain trip. And I think the individual operator with Airbnb, VRBO, whatever platform they're on, if not on a management company, they're able to provide the same amenities at a broader scale, a little bit more personable. You're no longer looking at a Marriott key to get into your room. You're looking at somebody's personal branded property that they created a quick $5 logo on or whatever. And then it adds that more experience. And I think from a hotel standpoint, I think we're losing the personal touch that a lot of travelers are looking for, other than, like, for me, I'm going to London, I'm staying in a hotel because it's just me. But if it was me and my family or me and my friends, I'd probably get a bigger property, right? And so the travel trends that we just discussed, like, really go into, I think, a lot of different factors. But at the end of the day, it's 70 properties trying to innovate and keep up with that market versus 10 Airbnbs surrounding that property that are in a better location or have, bigger space and broader amenities, are going to be, like I said, it's going to definitely impact and keep a market that a lot of hotels won't be able to keep up with.
Yeah, totally. I think it's easier to get clean sheets than it is to get new locations or add a balcony and a refrigerator, to the property, right? So a lot of why the big property manager companies have been growing recently is that consistency of the stay. That they know they're going to get all of this sort of same standardization of, like, nice sheets, nice pillows, clean bathrooms, and they're going to be able to get in and out of the property without having to call some guy to figure out how to, get a crowbar to get inside the place.
Yeah.
That was one of the, the initial things with Airbnb was, like, how am I going to get in? I arrive at midnight. Who's going to be there to, meet me and all that stuff? And I think that's all been solved, right? That's all pretty easy to solve with automated, door codes and all that stuff. So that stuff's easy to do. I mean, I'm still just not convinced that's really what people want. Like, people want unique stuff. People want, weird, pictures and posters and plants and whatever it is. That's what they sort of pick Airbnbs for. They wanted something that was sort of stale and generic, they would go to a hotel. I don't want to think about anything, and I got a presentation the next day. I'm staying in a hotel, right? But if I want to go somewhere new, I'm going to go somewhere in Europe, or I'm going to go somewhere in the middle of Texas I've never been to. I want to go see the Longhorns, right, in their room. I want to go get that local experience. And so, it's interesting, right? Because they're all trying to meet in the middle. They're all trying to converge, where the hotels are trying to bring in authenticity of the marketplace, and short-term rentals, they're trying to get to standardization of stays. And it's going to be interesting how it all pans out as everybody sort of to meet in the middle. And just really, it's a place to sleep. It's not a short-term rental. It's not a hotel. It's not an apart hotel, or who knows what it is, right? It's just a place that is a good value, where you need to go, that sort of suits the needs for that trip. And so that's kind of where we've arrived right now. It's just what's the trip, where am I going, and what's the best option for me?
Exactly. Well, I want to ask, just kind of off topic, from our little geek out session, I like to call this episode. I think I'm not even going to call this a podcast episode. It's just a geek out session. But what's your prediction? Just from seeing the amount of data that you have, I want to call it maybe not a prediction, but where do you see the industry leading towards with anything coming in the future? Where do you think the today's information and the information you've had since you started AirDNA, where do you think we're going to shift?
Good questions, huh? Don't prep me for these ones. Yeah, I think where we focus a lot right now is really on the real estate side of things, right? Real estate is as slow to move, if not slower than anything else I've ever dealt with, right? And one of the things I'm trying to figure out is if, short-term rentals are really a new asset class in real estate, what does that mean for how people buy and sell residential homes or multifamily units? And where does this mean? How does this all make sense? It's just better utilization of space across the US, right? And that's something I just really get behind, is that concept of why do people have third homes that are never occupied? Nobody's complaining about, the affordability of homes. Yeah, because he's got 12 homes, he's never there, right? Why can't we rent them out and so how do we think about utilization of space, and how do we think about short-term rentals in that new sort of paradigm. So that's sort of like big picture. I just do feel that like there is going to be this convergence, like how there is in short-term rentals and hotels, but how is real estate valued? That is sort of traditionally a residential property, commercial, like valued like commercial property, right? Valued off of cap rates, valued off of cash flows.
Yeah.
And so I think that's sort of like a big trend that we'll see is like institutional investors getting into the space. Now that short-term rentals, it has a good track record, it is sort of predictable, it does operate like a hotel, like how do we start to think about real estate in a different way? Now, in the actual industry itself, I think I sort of already gave you, I do feel large property management companies will struggle and suffer in any sort of downturn. Like their success.
What type of scale of large?
Like 1,000+ properties.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that because, one, I think they all need growth of new properties to succeed right now. And that all of their success and their metrics and their revenue is based off getting new properties. And we don't see that those people are performing well in the marketplace from a review standpoint. We don't see that any of those companies are really able to retain customers for multiple years. And so you see these homes like hopping from this platform to that platform to that platform. And so nobody's, in my mind, been able to prove out that they can do this at scale in 500 markets and make this a really scalable business. So I think you'll get back to more individual operators, small operators, do-it-yourself people. The people with 25+ properties will continue to dominate the space, especially if there's a downturn. I feel, hotels are going to get hit hard. I mean, I think that's the reality of it. Whether it's coronavirus or just a natural sort of, a light recession, I just think that because of the value of the Airbnbs, because of the cost basis of the Airbnbs, because Airbnbs, if you already paid off your house, you don't care, $99 a night, go for it, right? I don't have a staff, I don't have food and beverage, I don't have daily cleaning services. And so they can reduce rates to a place that hotels can't compete. And also in a recession, people have assets that are not utilized right now. They have second homes they want to make money from. They have a, ADU that they can open up, or like a garage that can be converted. And so I think what you'll see is like just sort of people hungry for income will start listing more places on Airbnb. People can slash prices on their short-term rentals more than hotels can. And so I think it kind of becomes a little bit of a perfect storm for hotels. And I think they'll suffer more than the Airbnbs in the world in the downturn. So not being so doom and gloom, what's exciting about the future, right?
Yeah.
I think it is becoming I like to sort of pride ourselves in creating a pretty transparent place in the marketplace. And I think it is just the proliferation of technology, automation, data, revenue management. Short-term rentals are still in its infancy, right? In terms of their sophistication, the connectivity in the marketplace is terrible. Like, how all the APIs and PMSs and stuff talk to each other is still a disaster. And so I think that's where most of the improvement is. The efficiencies on the connectivity, on the pricing, on anything to manage your property. I think that's just where the biggest room for improvements are these days.
I agree. I think it'll be interesting because I think it's funny that you say real estate as your first point, because next episode after this is really diving into the value of a home that is just a home versus a home that becomes a short-term rental, and the increase of sale and everything that we just talked about goes into. So I want to talk to you after that episode and see what you think. But big property management companies, 1,000+ properties, and you see the homes bouncing back and forth to different platforms, and the smaller operator growing with 25+ properties, etc. Do you think there's going to be a shift? Because I've been kind of preaching this a little bit as well, a shift from saying my property, or saying I have an Airbnb versus I have a property that I put on Airbnb, but then not only just that, but creating a direct booking platform. Like you said, we're a little slow. I think you are 100% right with I think the industry having a PMS system that does integrate well with all these different channels such as Vrbo and Expedia and Booking and Airbnb do you see with the data that you guys are finding with AirDNA, is there going to be a shift for people going that route of creating a more direct way of increasing their revenue instead of having all these fees and everything go that way?
I don't have a popular opinion on it, to be honest with you. I don't see that happening, right? You know, the hotels have been trying to go to direct bookings forever since the OTAs came around.
Yeah.
And they've been trying to figure out all of their loyalty programs and discounts they can try to get direct bookings. Now, while they've had some success over the last couple of years, you know, they also have brands, big brands that are in every single location. And so, yeah, and they have loyalty programs that work and are successful. I just don't think you can point to a vacation rental management company that has a decent loyalty program, has enough assets and enough locations that it makes sense to sort of think like, oh, I'm going to go to Florida. Let's go to Vacasa and go look at their, like, why would I go to Vacasa? You know, they've got 100 or 200, 300 properties when there's, you know, a million properties in Florida. Why would I want to limit my options to the Vacasa properties, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't think people get enough scale to get there. I don't think people are that concerned about consistency for them to be getting direct bookings. Now, if you're going to go to the same place over and over and over again, like, that's cool. You're going to get those direct bookings. If you want to offer significant 20% off discounts, cool. You're going to get direct bookings, right? But like, at what cost? Man, I don't know. I find it really hard. Everybody's trying to say they're going to create the brand. They're going to create the brand for this, the brand for that, right? The brand for group travel, the brand for, you know, I don't see it, right? Airbnb is the brand. Airbnb is, you know, proven to have a very successful brand that's pretty much beating up on anybody else that tries to get into the space. And so I don't know why, as a consumer, I would go to another site rather than Airbnb at this point in time. So I'm sorry to tell you, I think you're relying on Airbnb for the foreseeable future.
Hey, that's okay. I think it's cool to have the diversity of because a lot of individual hosts are going that. And from our area, you know, they have 1 or 2 properties, right? And they're like, yeah, we want to get direct bookings. Why would we give Airbnb or Vrbo 13, 17, 18% when we can collect that direct? And it's hard because as a host or a manager or owner, you don't have $5 million to pour into this certain demographic on booking.com that already has one of the biggest traveling platforms there is. So at the end of the day, you're battling funding and audience.
Yeah. And just like marketing, I used to market my place, Airbnb Santa Monica. I would pay, you know, whatever it was, $1 a click back in the day, and I'd get bookings that way, right? But it was super early. So if you have like a super random little town that like there are no hotels in, right? You might be able to get some bookings that way, but it is the exception to the rule to be able to like really go through some like PPC, you know, model and try to really get bookings cost effectively. I think. I mean, everybody's now bidding on these keywords. I'm in every single city. You put in Airbnb, any city, you know, I'm going to be on the first page. So we're all competing for those keywords. Yeah. It's just hard to stand out at a cost-effective way.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, I want to wrap this up. If you have any, you know, shameless shout-outs, if you want to, you know, say one last final word before we end the episode, I think this is your time to shine. And then I just also want to say for anybody that is listening, I'm shifting to a Slick Talker community. So if you do listen and you want to find out a little bit more after this episode, join the community on the Facebook page and the website. And we're going to have an exclusive members demo and kind of little explanation of the exclusives of AirDNA and MarketMinder and all the cool tools. So, but yeah, I'll let you kind of end the episode with a little shout out if you need it.
Plugs. I mean, sure. I mean, just the basics, really. Like, you know, websites, airdna.co. Go look up any single one of 100,000 markets for free. Get some basic data on the marketplace. Average $50 a month to kind of really dig deep into some actionable insights in the market, how to price your properties, how to analyze new properties and what their expected revenues would be. Check out our blog. We're always putting out great content. We're working really hard on the best places to invest piece right now, which dives deep into how to think about regulations, how to think about property management, how to think about where properties are undervalued as short-term rentals versus, you know, long-term rentals or primary residences. So yeah, always check out our blog, and we really try to do a good job of getting a bunch of great insights and data there. But yeah, come check us out.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
Hey everybody, if you're enjoying the podcast, I've created a Slick Talkers community group where anybody and everybody in hospitality can join on Facebook and also soon to be on the website. And this is where I'm going to create exclusive content for anybody, like I said, in the industry that follows the show, that follows along with what I'm putting out. And of course, with the whole coronavirus and quarantine and lockdowns going on in the world, what better time to do so than now. So go ahead and check out the link in this episode where I'll have the Slick Talkers community link, and you can join and we can see some exclusive content. And like I kind of mentioned in this episode, the walkthrough with Scott, who you just heard, with the Market Minder tool. So if you want to see how to use that properly and efficiently, then come check us out on the Slick Talkers community page. What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.